1996 rolls around for the Sega Genesis, and you're like, they're still making games for the Sega Genesis? 96 is starting to get into the CD world of everything. The Sega Saturn has already come out. A lot of people are really into PlayStation. A lot of hype behind the Nintendo 64 coming out in 96. But Sega Genesis still making games. So for 1996, here are just some of the games that came out for your Sega Genesis. How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here, and did you know I also make my own video games? I also make custom air fresheners like this one that smells like a 1980s arcade, menthol cigarettes, wood paneling, spilled Coke, and used gum. Of course, I got my new game smell, super popular. It's just like styrofoam and static. These and more, check out my link in the description. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe to this video specifically so I know that more people want to see more videos just like this. So make sure you're subscribed. Thank you much. 96 starts off with another fighting game, Time Killers on this one. Has a unique lineup of characters you can choose from here. And like the name implies, Time Killers, well, different generational things you can fight as here, with their own weapons and stuff too. Not the most polished fighting game in the world, but it was still, you know, an interesting take on what a 2D fighting game could be. One of the draws for this game was less about like the fighting mechanics and more about the fact that since you all had weapons, you could like remove limbs and stuff like that while you're playing this fighting game. That made it pretty interesting. Time Killers on the Sega Genesis. Yeah, alright. Got College Slam. Now, if you're a big fan of like NBA Jam or the NBA Jam Tournament Edition, well, this is that, but with college basketball teams. My biggest lament is they have 0 teams from Washington State. No Gonzaga, which is a travesty. There's no Washington State University. There's no University of Washington. Nothing. But if you're into college basketball and you like the NBA Jam style game, perfect. I mean, this is like, you know, I wish they would do more things like this. The very cozy Pocahontas for the Sega Genesis. This is before cozy gaming was even a thing. Pocahontas, based on the Disney movie, simple style puzzles, kind of easy to control. You can either play as Pocahontas, you can play as the raccoon. I don't remember the raccoon's name. You can help me out in the comments. Where you solve, again, very simple style, platformy puzzle type Disney style game. I'm here to tell you, I actually kind of like this game. I'll be honest with you. I remember renting this game, and I was like, hey, this is actually a pretty fun experience. Yeah, you probably beat it the first time you play it, you know, no problem there. But, yeah, you know, it was a decent playthrough. I kind of liked it. Marsupilami was a cartoon character that I honestly thought was going to be like the next big thing. It was going to be like the next big popular thing. Had kind of a fun vibe to it, you know, super long tail, and that tail is used in this game for various methods as well. The game itself was fine. The game itself was okay, and it really is a game where you just have to, I mean, it seems like a rescue mission this first little bit, where you have to, like, you know, get the elephant to the other side of the screen. And you do so by using your tail to attack the enemies, or to make it become a staircase to get your elephant friend to climb. More things happening later on in this game as well, but Marsupilami for the Sega Genesis. Check it out. Cutthroat Island, we also saw this game on the Super Nintendo. And you know what? It's actually a pretty decent fighting game. It's a that side-scrolling fighting game, but with that pirate vibe. You can do different moves. I mean, it is kind of monotonous, but what, you know, side-scrolling brawler isn't? It does kind of change up gameplay a little bit here and there, but yeah. Cutthroat Island came out for the Sega Genesis in 96. We get Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. I'll be honest with you, I kind of skipped this one. I think I rented it once. I think I checked it out just for a moment on a different platform, not really on the Sega Genesis, but they had it on the Sega Genesis as well, and it plays pretty okay for a Sega Genesis game. So if you're still rocking a Genesis, but you want to be part of the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 vibe, you know, even though other people are already playing it on like the Saturn or on the PlayStation. Was it on Saturn? I think I played it on PlayStation. I don't know. Every time there's a new Mortal Kombat game, I was like, I just want to play Mortal Kombat 2. People really like this one though, so I can't be knocking on it. Experts, I was pretty interested in playing because it just looked cool for a game for the Sega Genesis. And looked cool is about as far as it goes. Pretty clunky mechanics, pretty clunky fighting idea, fighting style. There is more going on in this game, but man, like Rise of the Robots, it looked fantastic, and that's about where it stops. And Experts, I mean, I was like, oh, Experts, is it gonna be like another X-Men game? No, it's nothing like X-Men. Arcade Classics came out for the Sega Genesis, and I always loved seeing compilations like this. Yeah, it gives you a chance to play some classic arcade games, you know, that are on a modern console. This one had a few of them. It had Centipede, good old Centipede. Not a very good version of Centipede, but it had Centipede all the same. This one featured Missile Command, and I love me Missile Command in the arcade, but no, not the best version of Missile Command on a console either. It's alright, there's one more game left, and it's Pong. Good old Pong. Alright, well, at least you tried. Bugs Bunny in Double Trouble. Bugs Bunny in Double Trouble here. Did you ever play this one? I played it a little bit. Not a whole lot. I should probably go through it and play it all the way through, because it's actually not terrible. I don't know what I was expecting when I was looking into this. So I think I'm still stuck in my NES ways, where it's like, oh, Bugs Bunny, great. I loved Crazy Castle. I loved Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout. They had a Bugs Bunny game I liked pretty well on the Super Nintendo as well. And this one's more of a, you have to kind of taunt, at least these first couple stages, you have to taunt Daffy Duck to chase you to turn the signs around from rabbit season to duck season. And that's how you defeat these levels, is by getting Daffy to turn around. But there are different things happening in the different stages later on in the game too. But I was like, okay, that's an interesting take on a Bugs Bunny game. I guess it kind of works. So the Sega Saturn comes out, 3D capabilities, so we're all waiting for that 3D Sonic game, and we get Sonic 3D Blast for the Sega Genesis, not the Sega Saturn. Interesting. Now this one took me a while to get used to. This one took me a while to get accustomed to, because at first I was like, I don't need a 3D Sonic game. If it's gonna be Sonic, just give me 2D Sonic. That's what I love. And when I played it, I was like, it's a little confusing. I kind of get it, but I don't know, not really for me. But the more you play it, the more you do kind of not get used to it, but the more you find its own charm. It's just like, yeah, I mean, it could have been anything else. It didn't have to be Sonic, but with the layout, with everything, I would have loved it to be a Sonic spin-off game. Like, don't play as Sonic, play as maybe a new character. Don't play as Amy, or anything, you know, whatever. But still in the Sonic universe, doing the Sonic things, you know, saving the animal critters from the enemies as you move on through these stages. Not a terrible game, but I mean, you know, it was the best we have, even though we had 3D capabilities with the Sega Saturn. We still got this for the Sega Genesis. Interesting. We see Vector Man 2. Now, Vector Man 1 came out the year before, and around at the same time, it took about a year for there to be a sequel, Vector Man 2. I was like, how can you pump out a sequel that quickly? Well, they did, and you know what's funny? Vector Man 2, I think, it's a pretty decent game. I think I might like this one more than Vector Man 1. Usually it's like Vector Man 1's the one, and then the late release, I don't know. But I think I had more fun with Vector Man 2. It just kind of looked cooler. I liked how it had the little blast mechanic, like the light, like the light shines when you shoot your gun. I was like, oh, that's a fun little feature. That's a fun little element. Someone was thinking about it. Vector Man 2 came out in '96 on the Sega Genesis. We also saw Virtua Fighter 2. Now, I was already playing Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn. However, in the arcade anyway, I didn't get a Saturn until a few years later. But, interesting that we would see a Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis. And it's not exactly like Virtua Fighter, but it's actually not a bad port, if that makes sense. Like, the best they could do. It's the best they could do. It still has the ring out, which is kind of fun. But, I mean, I don't know. I'd rather just play Virtua Fighter 2. You know what I mean? Just give me that one. You didn't have to do a demake, but they did anyway. And you know what? It's not a terrible, terrible demake. The fact that it's this and licensed is the other thing. Because there's been a lot of demakes that are unlicensed, but they actually chose to do this. Our friend at Williams made Williams Arcade Greatest Hits. This is different from the other Greatest Hits we saw, and this one is actually pretty sweet. Several games to choose from, including Defender. Good old Defender. Love me some Defender. Plays very good, I think, for the Sega Genesis. Gotta shoot the aliens and save the people, go down there. I played a lot of Defender for the Atari 2600. Same with Joust as well. Love me some Joust. And again, plays very well for the Sega Genesis on this one cart. I was curious to know how they're gonna do Robotron. And how they do Robotron is you're constantly shooting anyway. You don't have to push the shoot button, you're always shooting. But then your A and C buttons pivot you left and right. Not optimal, but works, I guess, kind of. Sinistar was always a fun one. I'm not very good at it, but I do love seeing it, and I mean, it's just fast shoot, you know, wait for that giant face to show up, and it probably kills you almost immediately, but boy, that was one of my first jump scares in video games, was seeing this thing pop into screen yelling at you. All of them play very, very well. Oh, and Defender 2 is on this too, but all the games on this play very good for the Genesis. And because it's not quite enough to make a whole video out of it, 1997 saw Jurassic Park: The Lost World. Look at this opening here. Man, what if this game came out? What if Jurassic Park looked like this when it was first released? Well, we at least got this, and I mean, it's okay. I didn't really play this one a whole lot, but, you know, it's alright. I like the fact you can hop in the car and drive around a little bit, and then other than that, shoot the dinosaurs and stuff like that. Honestly, didn't spend a whole lot of time playing this game, but cool to see that it came out in '97. And yes, we also saw a game in 1998, and that would be Frogger. Same as Super Nintendo, Majesco made Frogger. Not a newer version of Frogger, not an anything Frogger, just regular old Frogger. Just the arcade, it plays very well. It plays very well as an arcade version of Frogger. Odd that it came out in 1998 when the original game came out in 1981. There were new games, I don't know which ones, but I promise you there were new games that came out in 1998 where the developers for the games were not even born in 1981. And the fact that we see this game on here, well, cool. And with that, that wraps up Sega Genesis. I've already done these kind of videos for Nintendo and Super Nintendo. Got to do Nintendo 64, Game Boy, whatever else comes my way. Lot of video ideas. So make sure you're subscribed and we'll do some more coming up right quick.